Hi everyone, this is Nick versus Daniel LE. There's two Daniels, Daniel LI and Daniel LE. Okay, so let's just get into this. This is played on the 20th of October, E4, E5. Okay, so we got the Philidor defense. I've talked about this defense before. I don't think it's a good idea to block your own bishop in like this early on. I think it's a bit of a passive opening, and I think white gets a really good position after d4, and I really think that's how white should play it. It puts black immediately under pressure. You're threatening to just take a pawn. Whoops. And yeah, and it pretty much forces black to take you, and white just ends up with a pawn in the center and a knight in the center, and open lines for both his bishops to come out. It's just really, really strong. I would highly recommend that black play something like knight c6 instead, and just be ready to play into either an Italian opening or a Spanish opening, that sort of thing. I mean, you're not going to lose the game from playing the Philidor. It just puts you on the back foot a bit too early, a bit earlier than I like. Now, bishop c4 was played, which is perfectly fine. It's a normal move. d4 is probably a little stronger, but this is okay. And now bishop g4. And I've talked about this, the bishop coming out, the queen's bishop. You should really develop your king side before you develop your queen side. This isn't a problem at the moment. And yeah, it just, your king might get into a bit of trouble a bit later on. It's okay. It's not a problem. Castles, knight f6, yep. Knight comes out. Knight bd7. Yeah, I don't like the fact this king can't race off to the side early on, but it doesn't look like there's any way for white to take advantage of it. In fact, white doesn't even try and take advantage of it. Playing something like d4 is the way to try and to try and create an advantage by trying to open up these center pawns and get to this king, which can't escape very quickly. Okay, so d3 was played. C5. Now, I mean, this move creates a giant gaping hole on the d5 square. It's something I don't really recommend playing. It's okay in situations where this bishop is like over here somewhere, like stuck in here or over there. But with a bishop on this diagonal like this, this hole is a major problem. This bishop is very strong for a very long time. It'll just be an absolute pain to have to deal with that bishop. I much prefer a move like c6, and the idea is to try and get d5 in at some point. Maybe the knight can jump out to b6 out to here, and d5 can eventually be played. But by playing c5, you're never ever going to get this move in, or at least white has to do something very wrong for you to be able to get d5 in and fix that hole later on. And meanwhile, enemy knights can sit in that hole if they want to. They can pin your knight to your queen and then jump the knight in to attack it again. Probably best is just to play bishop e7 and be ready to castle your king, and then decide what to do in the center a bit later on. I really do think a c6 d5 sort of plan is the way to play. That's just my phone. I'll call them back later. Okay, so where are we? d3, c5, bishop g5. Yeah, that's good. h6. Yeah, I mean, the bishop's annoying. Kicking it away is fine. Bishop takes knight, knight takes knight. I think this actually helped black quite a bit, making this trade. This is your good bishop. It's on a different color square to your center pawns, and it's going to be a very strong piece for a lot of the game. I do like just dropping it back to e3, or maybe just jumping out to h4. And the idea here is, if your opponent starts pushing these pawns up, look how all these pawns are now on black squares, and these white squares become amazing little bases for your pieces to sit throughout the game. And this bishop, it's annoyingly placed here. It's a bit out of the way. I guess it's going to run into nothing for the rest of the game. You could try and play h4 and try and free it. The problem with taking is that it really does free black's position up. This knight back here was kind of a silly knight. It actually had nowhere good to go. I guess it could jump out to here. But by trading off your bishop for this knight, for the knight, you're actually just making his knight, which was pretty terrible, into quite a scary little piece. Yeah. Maybe just retreating back here is the way to play. So yeah, this move is actually a bit of a weakness, and it's something white can exploit later on, maybe by playing queen d2 and threatening sacrifices on this pawn once this king gets castled. So them getting h6 in is not really a problem. Um, Another thing you could have done is rather than play bishop g5 in the first place, just throw it onto e3 straight away and not give him that move in the first place. But let's have a look and see how it panned out. You're not going to lose the game from doing that, and I still think white has a very big advantage due to this hole in the middle of the board. So, whoops. So it's not really an issue. Okay, knight d5 was played. Yeah, throwing it in the middle is okay. I kind of want to deal with this problem here, this pin. I'd be thinking something like h3, just to try and put the question to that bishop. But I mean, it can get very weakening for your king if you do this, and the bishop sits back here. But once the bishop's here, you've got ideas like knight h4. Well, actually, you can't do knight h4 because it discovered attacks along this diagonal. But maybe once this queen moves away, knight h4 and then jumping into f5 can be very irritating for black to deal with. But yeah, you probably don't want to charge these pawns up the board until black's king gets castled. Knight d5, I'm not sure. Black can probably just ignore that. And he actually did. He went bishop back here. Yeah, okay, so knight takes f6, queen takes f6. A lot of swapping going off here. I don't think it's that bad. Just have to deal with this bishop problem here. Maybe just take it. Might be a way to play. Or bishop back to b3. I know c3 was played, and yeah, that's actually good. I kind of like that. If he does take the bishop, and he did, you can take back with the pawn, and black is left with a backward d pawn on d6, and this thing is going to be an absolute pain to defend for most of the game. If you can just imagine, rooks and queens coming on this line and hacking away at this pawn for the whole game. Black's bishop will have to just sit here for the whole game defending that pawn. And so if this knight could somehow find a way to attack this pawn, maybe jumping out to here and into here and attacking this pawn, or finding some way to get to here, that's easier said than done. Knight there to there to there to there, or something like that. But even if it got this far, it can just be kicked out of there. So on the one hand, it means this bishop's going to be passive for the whole game, but on the other hand, it is very difficult to get this knight over there. Maybe just trying to get the knight into the hole is the way to go. Maybe something like knight here to there to there to there. And if the bishop is sitting on e7, we can just rip it off from there and then maybe steal a pawn. But white's plan is pretty straightforward from this point. It's pile everything on the d file and try and destroy this pawn and try and maneuver the knight probably to this square or this square here. Getting to there isn't really feasible, but here or here would be a great spot for the knight to sit. Okay, so let's actually see what happened. Queen a4. Whoa, okay, that's an unfortunate blunder. I think white was trying to preserve his pawn structure. He thought, I'll just throw in the queen fork check, and then I'll grab the bishop, and with his pawn structure intact, he can still look to explode the center with d4 later on. So positionally, the idea behind it seems sound. Unfortunately, it fails to one move, b5. And yeah, the bishop gets defended and the queen gets attacked, all with the same move, meaning that white has just lost his bishop for nothing. Okay, so the white queen decided to try and sneak in and get underneath here. According to this, I was about to say, according to this, white is still winning. I didn't notice that. I thought, oh, that's a horrible blunder, but it turns out I was wrong. It's not a horrible blunder. Queen here with the threat of queen check, forking the king and the rook. Okay, it looks like white's actually doing well after all. So black took this pawn, attacking this rook. The problem is this queen can throw a check in here, and normally that wouldn't be a problem because the bishop is attacking this rook here. But the problem is after the check, the king goes to, if it goes here, you take the rook with check. If it goes here though, you can throw in another check, queen fork check, forcing the king back somewhere or up here, then allowing you to take the rook. If the king goes back, you just take whoops, you just take the rook check, and white is clearly winning. So the king will have to go here, right in the middle of the board. Scary stuff. White's got at least a draw. He can throw this check in here, and then just go check, 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 check forever. Yeah, I mean, this is a draw. Yeah, what if we just take the rook instead? The bishop takes this rook here. After we take this back, it's going to be equal, or is black going to be winning? However, white can start grabbing pawns with check along the way. King e6, and then we grab this at the end. And the material is equal. However, this king is not the happiest king in the world, and it's going to be under a lot of pressure. And this pawn here might be very hard to defend if this queen just simply gets in behind it and attacks it. This queen is actually out of play on this square here. So yeah, this position is far more complicated than I originally thought. Let's go all the way back. This queen check, which I thought was a massive blunder, turns out not to be. Requires perfect play from white, though, to get an advantage from here. Black took this, and white, unfortunately, didn't have perfect play. He played rook fd1, and yeah, unfortunately, that just loses. I think black is going to be up a piece, or yeah, probably just a piece. The main issue is the bishop can take this and it can defend the c6 square and the rook at the same time, which immediately stops this queen check here winning the rook. So this bishop has actually escaped. So back here, after bishop takes, queen there would have been great for white. Rook here, unfortunately, and white is now 2 pawns down, well, at least 1 pawn down anyway. Queen takes b5 check, makes sense. The king has to move. d8 is the only sensible square. And we've reached this position where black is a piece up, but the king is sort of stuck in the middle. Now this this queen takes this pawn here. It's a clever move. The pawn can't take back because it's pinned. And yeah, what does black do here? Black's kind of got a free move to do what he wants. He probably should just grab this knight, start trading pieces off. Grab the knight, and after he takes back, he might be able to grab this. It's tricky because this king needs to find a way to get safely over here, but I don't know how it's going to do it. So even though white is a piece down, the black's king safety is a major issue. Okay, so queen g6 was played, a sneaky little threat of just taking a free knight. Check, king c8, knight e1. Okay, so the knight comes back here and defends the g2 pawn. Yeah, so it's now black's turn. Black has just played rook b8. Seems okay, it seems good to me. Queen a6 check. It's a problem. Escaping all these checks is a massive problem. Rook b7, however, blocks the check and defends the a pawn at once. And the rook has got double protection from this, because it's also got the bishop protecting it as well. And maybe black can just slowly unwind by playing rook here, bishop here, and then rook across, rook out, and then maybe the king can slide its way over to the safe corner. But here, black didn't play that. Black played king c7, which let's white take this pawn with check. So he's lost this pawn, I think, unnecessarily. Rook b7 was played, and now another queen check. King c8. And yeah, f3 was played now. That frees up the knight, so the knight can now move. Or maybe it doesn't free it up. The bishop can drop back and still defend this pawn. Where did the bishop go? The bishop dropped back to f5. That lets the knight out. I don't think the knight has anywhere useful to go. Maybe here, there. It's hard to tell. Maybe white here should just... Oh yeah, because we can't play knight there, can we? The bishop just takes it for free. Maybe we should just double our rooks. Rook d2, and then bring the other rook in behind. And then after they're doubled, then the knight can start pouncing around. The move played was queen a8 check. That was answered by king c7. That's actually good because it pins the bishop to the rook, stopping the bishop from coming out. And then c4 was played. Maybe, I don't know, is there a problem with just rook d2? Is that a huge blunder? According to the engine, this should get played now. Ah, we can't take the rook. The queen gets trapped. The queen takes rook. We've got rook b8. You know, and I mean, you get 2 rooks for the queen, but it's not something white should want to go into. I mean, he's already material down, so making some massive trades like that doesn't help him. The queen was very powerful on the queen's side, wide open space with an exposed king. He doesn't really want to go into that. Okay, maybe this check was not a good idea. According to the engine, it is. So what do I know? Okay, queen a8, king there, c4. Now here, black played rook takes b2. He needs to deal with this kingside development. Yeah, bishop e7 was definitely the move. Whoops. The problem is he's got 3 pieces attacking, but this king is exposed, and white has 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces that can participate in this attack here. And as a consequence, white might be able to find some sneaky way to draw this, or maybe even win by checkmating the king. So stealing this pawn was very risky, and bishop e7 was the move. Or if you didn't see the tactic of trapping the queen, maybe a move like queen here. Well, that looks very dangerous. I don't think you have time for stuff like that. c5 is quite scary. It had to be bishop e7, but that's very hard to find. Okay, so rook b2, queen a5 check. Whereas the engine likes this check here, and it actually likes queen out to a3 as well. Okay, queen a5 check, king d7, c5. Yeah, so white's got an enormous amount of pressure. You can sort of see, because black's rook and bishop is in the corner. Yeah, white's not really losing as such. He's got just as many pieces attacking as black has defending. So here in this position, once again, getting the bishop to safety, getting the bishop out so the rook can come out, should be a high priority for black. Black should be trying to do that as soon as possible. But instead, he's gone for his own sneaky little checkmate down here. Well, he's got rook takes, knight takes, queen takes, mate. So clever idea. White needs to play something like queen g3 or something at some point. It's tricky. It's very tricky. Now, queen a7 was played. According to the engine, queen a4 check is the move, with the idea that once the king moves, we've got queen c4 check, and after d5, can't the queen just take it? Oh, some weird stuff going on due to the fact the king is so exposed. But yeah, this queen could have done some pretty mischievous things. Like imagine if the king went back here, for instance. Apparently we've got g4, which traps the bishop here and keeps the position alive. And there's ideas like c6 and stuff like that coming very soon. Okay, let's go to the actual game. So queen a7 was played. The king jumped into e6, and then g3. Yep. Then black took the pawn. Oh no! Gotta get the bishop out. Get the bishop out so the rook can come out, and then you're winning. I mean, this king is gonna do a little bit of a journey as it tries to find an escape to all these checks. But you got to get your big major pieces into the game, or you are gonna lose. The d takes c5, and according to this, queen d7 check is now about level, about drawn. So even though black is a whole piece up, yeah, they think it's level, because after king f6, queen takes h3. Well done, Nick. You've followed the engine. You've done the engine's moves perfectly. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's about equal. Slight advantage to black, but black is still struggling because he hasn't got these pieces out of the corner. So black then played c4, trying to march this pawn up the board, but it needs help. It needs support. I don't mind this move though, because it frees up the c5 square for a bishop check. So you're actually threatening to get your bishop out with check, which gets the rook out. So this one is good. Let's go queen c8. Okay, that's clever. That stops the bishop from coming out with check because the queen just takes the bishop. Queen h5, threatening stuff down here. This queen check was, oh, just notice this is not a good idea. Queen d8 check. Instead, what do we do? Here we've got a forced win, don't we? Queen c6 wins for white. Because after the king moves to, for example, g5, you play h4. And, the king's only got one square there, and then you g4, and you win the queen. Or if after the check he goes king here, g4 straight away, wins the queen. And if he goes back here, we've got forced mate. So yeah, there was a forced win for white. Right here, he just played the wrong check. I think he noticed that there was a good chance of pulling off a checkmate, but he's gone and thrown the wrong check in, unfortunately. And yeah, and bishop e7 was played. I think the king can just go to g6 and hide in the corner here, and white's in a lot of trouble trying to deal with this mate down here. What's going on? My screen's locked up. Sorry, I'm trying to move this black queen. There we go. So yeah, the threat down here pretty much forces something like queen h4. But after queen takes, pawn takes, bishop check, king h1, I really like black's position. He's got a rook on the second rank. He's got this powerful bishop. He's got a very extremely scary passed pawn, and his other rook is ready to swing across and maybe harass this pawn here. Or maybe he can march this pawn forward and try and do something like bishop here and just have a very annoying pawn to deal with. But black played bishop e7, and bishop e7 actually loses because the bishop is pinned to the king. You can play rook d6 check, and if king goes to f5, we've got this annoying check here, and the king must move, and then we throw h4 check in. And if the king can't move anywhere, he has to sack his queen for the pawn. Or if he goes straight here straight away, we go h4 check, forcing that, which allows queen d7 mate. So here, after bishop e7, rook d6 was the move, using the pin paralysis to get that check in, and then you end up mating the king or winning the queen. Instead, though, he grabbed the rook in the corner, which is very unfortunate because it was a very well played game by Nick. A piece down for most of the game, but he managed to put that black king under extraordinary pressure. And yeah, black's solution was to counterattack, and it paid off. It worked. He's got the rook and the queen, and he just pulls off a check here. And this is where I think white resigned, because after queen here, we've got your choice of 3 different checkmates. Checkmate, checkmate, or the prettiest one, checkmate. Okay, so quite a few things there. I hope people learned something from this game. And that's it for now. I'll see you all later.